Games Workshop recently released the new Cathay range for the Old World, and I am obsessed. However, I don't really play Old World, so I had a thought, what if I made them into Age of Sigmar? So come along for the journey as I kitbash these guys up, converting them into Idoneth Deepkin models for Age of Sigmar. It's tabletop time. So what is my plan to make these guys into Idoneth Deepkin? Well, we have this amazing army box that Games Workshop sent over for us, as well as the Great Lord too. Now, Idoneth Deepkin did just come out with a new spearhead, and I think I want to replicate this pretty much one-to-one. Having a spearhead to start off with, I think, will be really useful for me. Plus, if I want to expand on the army later too, I think having these units will be a really good idea. So in this spearhead, you have your Namadi Reavers. So these are your guys with the bows. And for that, I'm going to be using the Jade Warriors that are in this box. And these guys don't have bows, so I'll try my best to source some so I can make them into Namadi Reavers. Next up, we have our guys on eels. And again, there's some cavalry in this box that I think will work really well. However, the eels are a bit more on the spindly, smaller side. So I'm gonna have to think of another creature to use to chuck the Jade Warriors on, because I feel like they're gonna be pretty big and bulky and heavy, so, but totally doable, which is great, so we can move on to the final model. And lastly, in this spearhead is the High King of the Deep. And I think that this guy is gonna work pretty much perfectly. I will have to make a couple of changes, but otherwise, it's a dude on a serpent, and I think that the models will convey really nicely. So basically for now, all I have to do is kitbash a bunch of stuff up, cut some hands, get rid of some heads, you know, the good old trying to hack and slash GW models to make them into something new and exciting. So let's move over to tabletop time and get started. Woo! So why Cathay, and why try to even do this project? Now, I don't play Old World, and I don't really have that much interest in playing it. I think that it's unique, and I think it has its place, but for me personally, who isn't super into the war gaming side of Warhammer, I think it goes a little bit beyond me. Now, I will say I did try to get into fantasy back in the day, actually just before Age of Sigmar came out. I really wanted to collect Wood Elves, and then a rumor mill said that most of the fantasy range was getting scrapped for a new fantasy game, which would be Age of Sigmar. Age of Sigmar for me personally is just a more fun game. I find it easier to understand, and I've come to realize that I'm just a bit of a fantasy fan at the end of the day. Well, I'd heard about Cathay back in the day. I knew they were a faction that sort of existed within the Warhammer fantasy realm, but never really got a proper release. When I heard the announcement that was made on Warhammer Live that this would be getting a full range, for some reason my brain automatically thought that it would be for Age of Sigmar, but it turns out it was for Warhammer the Old World. And the models in this entire range are absolutely gorgeous. I really enjoy some of the real world mythological stories. Back in high school when we were learning a lot about history, I did take a special interest in Chinese mythology, which obviously this range takes a huge inspiration from. So when I looked at this range, I thought aesthetically, this could work for Age of Sigmar, but obviously they don't have rules. They're not a faction that currently exists. So I'd have to try and figure out if I could make them aesthetically look like another army and use them as proxies. The normal fit would probably be Cities of Sigmar. However, I personally have always wanted to do an Idoneth Deepkin army, but there was something a little bit off. I found that they were a bit more evil, I suppose. Idoneth is really interesting because I feel like it has this sort of good and bad side of it. There's kind of like evil Idoneth and not evil Idoneth. The Thralls also kind of threw me off because they never had any eyes, and that's kind of cool, but is also kind of weird. I've dabbled here and there in painting a couple of Idoneth models and sort of tried to get a warband started, but at the end of the day, for me, it just didn't really click. The other thing to note is that one of my favorite models from this range is the giant sea turtle that you can get, but this model has been out of stock for a very long time, at least in Australia. It's been like a good couple of years, and I don't see it getting another release, which is really sad. I also love this particular model in this range. It's the guy with the waterfall as a cape, and I think aesthetically this is a really awesome model. But aside from that, the rest of the range was a bit of a hit and miss for me. For an army that I want to represent me and I want to paint up and play, they were okay, I suppose. And at the end of the day, I actually ended up moving on to a Daughters of Cain army. But then Cathay got released and I thought, hey, why not explore this together? So the whole point of this is trying to take some of the flavor from Idoneth Deepkin and the fishy, mermaidy mythology and try to also incorporate some of that awesome Chinese mythology that is seen in the Cathay range. Also want to quickly mention there are a couple of other models in this range that I absolutely love and think that this would be really cool to adapt, but I haven't quite decided how. I love the big balloon and I think that this could be interpreted as the turtle somehow. I'm not 100% sure how, but I think this could be really cool to explore one day, is using this air balloon and trying to make it like, I suppose, in a way. I just think it's also a really cool model too. I also love the Sentinel. The Sentinel is actually one of the first models I saw and was like, oh my goodness, this army, if it's Rage of Sigma, I'm totally in. Nevertheless, I love this particular model and I don't know why. He kind of reminds me a little bit of the avatar that you can get for Elder in Warhammer 40k, except on a bigger scale. And I think this Sentinel, if he was a little bit Idoneth and I wouldn't change too much about him, would be so cool as like this golem that comes out from the water covered in moss and seaweed, and he is just this Sentinel that lives underwater and is made of stone, and that's, I don't know, I just find that really cool. So that's pretty much it for the plan in the broad sort of strokes. The technical aspect of it, that's what you're here to watch to see if I can even do this. I have a lot of work to do to try and get this spearhead done, so I better get started. So I've just gone ahead and started building up some of the cavalry units that I'll be using for this project. They're looking pretty good. However, there is one big thing that seems to be missing, and that's obviously the unit that they're gonna sit on, their horses, or in Idoneth Deepkin's case, the eels. But I do have an alternative that might just work. A little while ago on the channel, I did do a brief little dive into Idoneth Deepkin, and I painted up a couple of models from the Raging Heroes range. The first range that they did also had a cavalry unit too, which are basically these guys on some sharks. And the sharks I thought would work pretty dang well with these guys in particular. I think because the Jade Lancers are a bit bulkier and heavier, putting them on an eel may look a bit odd because an eel is kind of like spindly and thin. So the sharks I'm hoping will be a good alternative, but we'll have to see how that goes. We have all of the files that we need, so we can print these bad boys up and see what they look like. Wow, a whole lot of gray. Mushy gray. So exciting. Okay, let's take it off and see if it actually worked. So these have all come off. These are the replacement for the eels. These are shark boys. They've all printed really well. I'm gonna throw them in the washer, cure them. Hopefully they cure. It's very, very cold. Sick. Building. So now moving on to my last guy. And I'm really excited for this one. I saved him till last. Pretty much build him straight out of the box without doing too much conversions. And the dragon, 100% going to build him pretty much 1-for-1. I might leave the wings off. I haven't quite decided because in the original, he's like a serpent. However, for the Lord, I am gonna make some changes. I was really lucky to have someone in the community reach out and provide me with some Idoneth Deepkin bits. And in particular, they happen to have some pieces of their Lord from the Idoneth Deepkin, including this really cool headpiece and face as well. So I'm probably gonna replace his face with this one. This sword is really cool too, but I believe he originally carrying a lance. Yeah, so we'll work out something really cool there. But I'm really lucky to get a couple of pieces like this. So I think I can theme him up really nicely. Along with some of the bits that I got, I also got a bunch of little sea creatures as well, and some weapons and banners as well, which is going to be super helpful in order to try and sort of meld a bit more Idoneth Deepkin stuff into the look of the Cathay stuff. But bases is a whole other kettle of fish that I'm going to sort out a little bit later, but for now I really just want to get these models pretty much built and ready to go. Then I can spray them, and spraying them is I'm gonna try it something brave. But for now, I'm gonna build up this guy, make some conversion changes, kitbash him together, and then hopefully I can finish all of the pieces off, do a fit check on the eel guys, put the arms on for the warriors, and then add in all those little bits and pieces. And hopefully by the end of the day, they will have at least be fully built, which would be amazing. So let's get back to building. is day 2. First of all, I haven't done a whole lot of shooting with these guys because they've been incredibly fiddly to deal with. So I'm going to quickly show you now in a vlog what I have done. I have replaced their blades with the Ideneth Deepkin blades, which is pretty cool. Also their swords. I have also test fitted them on the sharks. They're pretty okay. I'm going to maybe do some gap filling. Moving on to these guys. These are my archers. It's kind of funny because they're not in like firing poses, I guess, but that's fine. I think they're still kind of cool either way. This guy is all done, which is awesome because he really is the big standalone model piece. Did a fair bit of kitbashing here. The sword, the halberd is a little amalgamation of both. His head is new. I decided to leave the wings off to not make him a dragon, but I think he looks pretty dang cool. I'm pretty impressed, to be honest. I think he's pretty sick. So TLDR, basically I need to glue all of this together, make sure it all works, and then I can move on to the next step. So, movie magic, woo! Now, I will admit that I'm a complete novice when it comes to airbrushing. And the airbrush that I did use as well is very much just a beta airbrush. It doesn't have any type of precision. It literally just shoots it out, which is fine. I just really wanted to get some color on these guys just to make the whole painting process a lot easier. But the only way that you get better at these things is just to keep trying. And this little experiment and experience has taught me that I actually do kind of like airbrushing. It makes me kind of wonder if I should invest in a decent one and start experimenting. It was really hard to not get the color to splatter everywhere, which is why I ended up using a little bit of Glad Wrap to try and keep my colors consistent. Also, working out the ratios of paint to thinner was a bit odd at some points, and it did take a little bit of practice for me to sort of understand the consistency that I was after for it to lay on the models correctly. Either way, like I said, I'm super happy with the colors that I've chosen and the way that they blend together really nicely, and I can see why some people would be opting for an airbrush. With all that said and done, our models have color on them and they look gorgeous. So I'm gonna go ahead and start hand painting. But let's get into painting the start of this spearhead. Woohoo! We did it, yeah! So we are on to day 3 of this project. I went home over the weekend and did a little bit of work in preparation for the rest of the work week. And the boys are still over in America. So I still have the studio to myself, which is great. And I'm doing absolutely fine and coping really, really well. So where am I up to in this project? Well, everything has gotten a base coat, which is great. And everything's also gotten a wash too. I'm gonna paint over the top of the wash colors with the base color, just to bring everything up again to a really vibrant color, I guess. That made sense, right? But while that's still drying, I'm gonna move on to the king and get him base coated as well, using the color scheme I've already established and painting up the little sea serpent thing too, which is very exciting. So yeah, that's pretty much it. All I need to do now is move on to the king and I'll show you guys how I paint him up and also a little review on the Monument Hobbies paints and how I've found using them. So let's talk about the colors that I wanted to use for these guys. Firstly, I wanted these guys to pop. When I think about sea creatures, the bright colors definitely come to mind. I also wanted to make sure that the color palette that I used had complementary colors in it as well. Looking at these guys, I knew metallics would also be something I would have to consider. The biggest bane in my painting history is painting metallics, and these guys are absolutely full of them. So to make it easy for myself, I decided to keep these guys in the jade color spectrum, which is the color that they are used in Old World. Leading off for a complementary color here, I did originally want to go with orange, but I found this red orange that was sort of a good undercolor, and I actually used this particular color quite a lot. As for the metallics, I knew I'd have to use both silver and gold, so I used these in unison, looking up a couple of reference images to see what metallics would be placed where. In my search, I found that a lot of the plating was done in silver with a beautiful gold trim. The last color I needed to incorporate was for leathers and stuff, which for this army, I think a brown worked perfectly well. And I have to say, I'm super proud and happy with this color palette. I think it ticks all the boxes that I wanted to achieve originally, and I think it stands out really nicely on the tabletop. So So the paints that I used today were all from Monument Hobbies, which they very kindly sent over to us to try out. And this isn't sponsored or anything, but I've been really wanting to get my hands and test these paints out because I'd heard amazing things about them. And overall, I'll say yes, I actually really do like these paints. The color payoff is amazing, they dry matte, and overall I just really enjoyed using them. So I'll definitely be picking up a few of these in the future and adding them to my painting repertoire because I really did enjoy using them. So where I'm at is basically everything is base painted, washed, and I have been going ahead and putting on some highlights and those little fine details as well. After getting to this point in the project, I've decided I take back what I said completely. I hate washes. I think washes are terrible. I think they dull down my projects too much, and I think they're a really good idea, but it turns out they're not. I think they're good for the metals. They look really good on the metals. For everything else, not great, but it's fine. It just means I'm gonna have to spend a bit more time bringing those colors back up again, which is totally fine, whatever, it is what it is. But I do need to move on to the next part of this project, which is the bases. I already put some texture paste on all of the bases that I was going to use just as like a sandy foundation. Well, it wasn't obvious they're gonna be based in sand. They're gonna be in the sea, essentially, so I don't have to worry too much about the environment because it's the ocean. This means all I have to do now is glue on some little pieces that I lovingly got donated. And these little sea creatures and sea anemones that I think, when glued on, really do tell the narrative of these creatures being underwater. Once these were glued on, I gave them just a quick base paint in a sandy yellow color, and then worked my way up, dry brushing them into a more sandy beachy color. I picked out certain colors for all of the sea creatures as well, making these bright and poppy, but still contrasting with the model that would be placed on the base. And for this whole project, this was definitely the easiest part. I didn't have to do too much here, and I think that the little creatures look fantastic. It does mean, however, I'm going to have to try and source a bunch of these guys out, maybe even resort to 3D printing some stuff as well, but I do think they look really good in the end. And I'd be super interested to try doing a larger base and see how it turns out as well. But with the bases all done and a model painted for each of the units that are in this spearhead, I can finally show you guys the final result. And here it is. And here is our Patreon shout out. Thank you to everyone that is a part of our Patreon. Without you guys, we wouldn't be able to make amazing videos, and your support truly means the world to us. If you'd like to sign up to our Patreon, you get some awesome perks for joining up today. All the links will be down in the description below, so you can check it out for yourself. And again, a huge thank you to all of our Patreons. And here it is, the army all finished up, well, the spearhead done at least, and I'm super proud and happy with how this came out. Wasn't sure how Ideneth Deepkin and Cathay would mix together, but I think they worked really well. Also love the color choices, and I'm actually really excited to keep going with this army and see what happens. We received a few other kits from Games Workshop for the Cathay range. So there's a couple of these that I'm really excited to try and kit bash together. So that is to say, this is not the end of this army, and if you guys would like to see more, please make sure you write down in the comments below, like this video, subscribe as well to let us know that this is something that you're interested in, because I certainly am, and I absolutely loved this project. So that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one. And I believe the boys are back from America as well, so it's time for another Tabletop Time Team video.